Okay. I will talk about this, I think, just really briefly the next thing, but let me just say this, right? Horton's laws, Tokunaga's laws, these are all about averages. And so you realize, oh, you know, these things have all this variation. What happens when we do that? And so that's a real problem, right? So here's just a little bit of it. This is, say, this is actual real data, right? This is Mississippi. These are underlying length distributions for order 3, 4, 5, and 6 basins. Here they've been rescaled, right? We're rescaling them, and there are just some useful choices you can make here, and put on a logs, put on a, a different, actually it's the same thing. There's really just log here, yeah, and then this is just a normal scale, a linear scale. And so you can see, it's a bit harder here, but there's this kind of peak, this peak, this peak, and another peak here. They all fit onto some sort of universal distribution. So, what we've been doing so far is just saying, oh, this is the length of an order 3, this is the length of an order 4, this is the length of order 5. All of those calculations have just been about having these, like a Dirac delta distribution, right? There is just one length. It all fits together perfectly. But actually, there's this big spread. So this is a bit problematic, right? So we have to sort of think, well, does this all work? This is what we call a scaling collapse, where you have these different distributions, and you know how to rescale them. It's really quite a nice thing. You can do some nice pieces. So you can say, we have all this internal stuff, right? So say we have an 11th order basin, like the Mississippi. But we know all about the 3s and 4s and 5s. We have lots and lots of examples of those. We have good statistics for them. So in this case, we've taken the order 3 ones and the order 4 ones and rescaled them. And then this is a plot of this. What this shows you is this is the actual overall length of the order 11 one. So you could scale all the internal ones up to the largest scale. You only have one sample of the largest basin, right? There's just one of them. And there are 3 or 4 at the next order, order down, and then maybe 16. This is the average for that. So the point is, like, this is just one way to say, this whole basin is internal. It's consistent with its internal structure. So it's not so bad, and you can play around with these things, and you'll see, for example, the Nile. This is how much longer the overall one is. This is in 10 to the 3. The ratio is here. So this is what you would expect estimated from the internal one. This is the actual value. So the Nile, and we know it, right? The Nile is a long basin, right? So the point of this is to show that the overall structure is not the same. This is sort of a nice little calculation to make. Very quickly, I'll just show you that there's madness, right? You can start to do all sorts of things. It turns out that there are exponential distributions for the gaps between these things. We assume that to be all constant. You can play around with that. You can get here are these exponential distributions. You can start to convolve them together to make those internal distributions. Then you have to convolve these together, and this is the Powell law on the outside. So it's convolutions of convolutions and so on. So you can actually really go deeply into this architecture and see at this sort of micro scale is like just randomness of how things fit together, and then start to kind of put it all together, and you'll end up with a Powell law size distribution at the outside. So that's a lot of pain and suffering, but I just want to show you that it's kind of there. Generalized Tokunaga's law, I'm not going to talk about this, but you can generalize that in ridiculous ways, statistically, right? This sort of thing. Okay. Yeah, you don't need to know. This is bananas. Okay. Look at this, just madness. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And they're weird distributions, right? They're not like normal distributions or something. This is this weird particular distribution. We end up with this kind of underlying thing. Oh my God, wow. Okay, this is just to sort of show you that it can go into madness, and I'm not going to put you into that. But all of this was to try and understand how the architecture of these networks. I think we really absolutely have that now, but it still remains to come up with sort of a beautiful story, or find the beautiful story for or ugly story. It doesn't have to be beautiful. Truth is not beautiful. For how these networks grow, but we'll have more about optimality of networks coming up that I feel pretty good about. So we'll get to that, right? So your insides, it doesn't matter if you're a pig or a human, right? We had those examples. There's kind of a broad optimality of getting stuff from one place to the other. Talking too long. That's what I do. Sorry, I will stop that. You have a question? No. Everyone can run away, of course, because, yeah, you are liberated